Hi everyone, Dr. Victoria Skirbo here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. And today is Friday, June 14th, 2019. It's Flag Day, and it's also Donald Trump's birthday. And I mentioned that I might do an evaluation of his solar return chart, and I got a lot of interest in that. So I thought I would take the time tonight and do that for you. So just a couple of remarks about solar return charts. Solar return charts are charts that are erected for when when the sun reaches the position that it was at the time of your birth by degree and minute. And so you can have your solar return on the day of your birthday, the day before your birthday, or the day after your birthday. It sort of depends on the year. And Donald Trump has his solar return on his birthday, but it's at 2 o'clock in the morning. So his solar return, his sun came to the position that his sun was in at the day of his birth at 2, I think it was 05 or 2:03 in the morning. Now, your solar return chart is really the story of your sun. And because he is the president of the United States, the sun is significant because in a mundane chart, the sun is generally the leader. And so we can get an idea of, so it's even more, perhaps more important to look at his solar return chart. Now, the solar return chart is a moment in time, just like the natal chart is, and it sort of lasts from your birthday to your next birthday or your next solar return. And so it is sort of a temporary story. Now, the planets continue to move, and the planets are influencing him. And I don't have his natal chart up, but I do pretty much know his natal chart by heart at this point. And when one of these planets in his solar return chart interacts with his natal chart, I will mention it and tell you what I think it means, etc., etc. So, and I erected this chart for Washington, D.C. Now, there's two schools of thought on where your solar return should be. Many people use the natal location. So in his case, it would be New York City, Queens. And then some people do it by where you happen to be the day of your birthday. And he happens to be at the White House in Washington, D.C. So I did do it for Washington, D.C. Now, the difference between Washington and New York is there is a difference, but it's not a huge difference. If he was in California, there'd be a bigger difference. If he was, if he did his birthday over in England or in one of the other countries he was visiting, it would be quite a bit different. The planet positions, degrees, interactions with each other would be the same, but the houses would be different. So let's look at his solar return chart for 2019. And I just want to mention something about his solar return chart and the energy of his year. I also do numerology. Of course, you know that. You're watching my channel. And we have something called a personal year. And every year on our birthday, we move into a new personal year that lasts from our birthday to our next birthday. Some people in numerology count it from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, but I like to carry it from birthday to birthday. I find it's more personal. Now, you get that information by adding the month and the day, and in his case, we have 6, which is June 14th. We add that together, we get a 20. And if we add that to the universal year vibration of 2019, which is 12, we get a 32. If we add the 3 and 2 together, we get a 5. So he has a 32, he's in a 32-5 year. Now, what's significant about the 32-5 is the 32-5 is actually the life lesson of the United States of America, but it is also the shadow. And so he could express the shadow of America, and he's certainly going to teach America a lesson this year. 5 is a number of freedom it's the number of change. And so it's a time of change. 32.5 is a Leo vibration. He has a Leo ascendant and he has his Mars in Leo and his Pluto in Leo. And both Mars and Pluto are in that 12th house. Mars is your actions. In the 12th house, you can undo yourself through your actions. Pluto is your unconscious desires. And when you have Pluto in the 12th house, as he does natally, there's a deep fear that you are nothing. And so you do everything that you can to show people that you are something. Okay, so, all right. So he does not have, let me look here before I speak. He does not have any Leo planets in his solar return chart. So that would be significant, but he doesn't have those. So there's enough significance with this chart all by itself. So let's look at his solar return chart. Because the first thing I want to look at in a solar return chart is where the sun falls in the solar return chart, because it is a solar return. So the position and the house of and the aspects to the sun are going to be very important. Okay, and so we have his sun here as he had his birth sun at the same degree, 22 degrees 55 minutes. So that's 23 degrees. If you're doing the Sabian symbols, that's 23 degrees of Gemini. Let me grab my Sabian symbol book. It's right over here. I don't know if I've ever read his Sabian symbol. So this, I'm sure I have. I just don't remember it, fortunately. Or fortunately, I can't remember everything. I only want to remember the important stuff. Okay, so let's see. 23 degrees of Gemini. I'm curious, so we're going to slake our curiosities. Okay, 23 degrees of Gemini. 3 fledglings in a nest, high in a tree. The growth of spiritually creative processes in at least relatively integrated minds. So the growth of spiritually creative processes in at least a relatively integrated mind. I think relatively integrated mind is quite apt here. It says here, this is the third stage of a process which should lead to a deeper and more natural understanding of human existence. It suggests that the ambitious mass protest of aroused and largely blind desires should be transmuted through harmonization with natural drives in terms of spontaneous responses attuned to this phase of natural evolution. Stressed here is creative integration. Well, he certainly is creatively. He is very creative. He's creative in the yarns and the lies that he spins. So he's very quite creative, and of course he has a Leo ascendant, which would tend to make you creative. Okay, in his natal chart. All right, so we have his Gemini moon in Gemini's house, the third house. He has in his solar return chart, he has an Aries ascendant. So it's a natural chart. Okay. The sun in the third house brings out his Gemini qualities even more. Okay. If it's even possible. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. And Mercury is the patron god of thieves and liars and salesmen. Okay. So there's an amorality about Gemini. We come into our moral codes and our moral compass when we look at Sagittarius. Now, incidentally, he does have his moon natally in Sagittarius. In this chart, he has Jupiter in Sagittarius. He has Jupiter up in Sagittarius. It is retrograde in the 9th house, and it is opposite his sun. Oppositions bring awareness. Jupiter, Gemini, Jupiter and Sag, truth and lies. Gemini, sun in Gemini, truth and lies. And so this is an awareness around the truth and the lies. Okay. This Jupiter is conjunct his natal south node and his natal moon. And so when Jupiter transits over your south node, it opens up the past. The path. Jupiter is about understanding. There's an illuminary quality about Jupiter, and it tends to like open a can of worms if there's a can of worms to be opened. It expands anything that it touches, and so we're talking about his south node in his natal fourth house, which is the house of home and clan and family and real estate. And he has his moon there. He has his moon conjunct his south node. When you have your moon conjunct your south node, it could be one of two things or a combination of that. One is that your emotions are stuck in the past, making America great again. It could mean that your emotions, the moon, has yet to evolve. And so you come in with a sort of stunted emotional evolution, a stunted emotional growth. And through the experience of the life, it's really about moving to that north node. And he has his north node in Gemini. The north and south nodes that I talk about are the north and south nodes of the moon. And so it's the axis of our emotional evolution. He has his sun opposite his moon. He was born on an eclipse, a lunar eclipse. I believe it was a blood moon. And south node eclipse. South node eclipse, I believe, yeah. North node eclipse? I'm not sure. Don't listen to me on that one. I can let you know though. He also has he has his sun up there on his north node, and he has Uranus on his north node. And so this Jupiter that's sitting on his south node and his moon is also opposite his natal sun, north node, and Uranus. Uranus expands our consciousness. Jupiter is also an expansive principle. Uranus is erratic, being erratic. And so we might see him be more erratic. God help us. Okay, so we have that. Now, because his solar return chart has an Aries ascendant, it's important to see what what Mars is doing. I'm skipping ahead. What Mars is doing, because what Mars is doing is important because Mars is the ruling planet of the chart. He has Mars in Cancer in the fourth house. This is clan, family, home. This could be some patriotism stuff, right? He has it conjunct the North Node in Cancer. And he also has Mercury here in Cancer. And so Mars in Cancer can be very challenging. Mars is the energy of forward motion. And Cancer, as an energy, is unable to move forward. They can only move sideways and backwards. Crabs can only move sideways and backwards. And Mars in Cancer tends to have these rushes forward and then this retreat. So the energy rushes forward and then retreats, rushes forward and then retreats. And so it's a very emotional Mars. It's a very triggered Mars. It's a very feeling your feelings kind of Mars. And it is conjunct the North Node. So on some level, he is here in this life to feel his feelings, to get down to the core of his soul. Because the fourth house is the house of soul. Now, the south node is up here in Capricorn in the 10th house. The 10th house, the south node is what we're requiring to let go of. In Capricorn, it's structures that no longer serve our evolution. So if being president has served his evolution, we could say that perhaps being president will go by the way. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm saying that the energy is there for that. He also has Saturn on his south node. And when you have Saturn on the south node, you're held responsible for your past. He also has, remember, Jupiter on his natal south node, which expands the past. So there's this energy of being held accountable. And we also have Pluto up here. And Pluto is actually opposite his Venus and his Saturn. He has a Venus-Saturn conjunction in Cancer. That Mars is close to, but it's like around 23 and 25 degrees. And so Pluto is opposing that. And that's really a very powerful opposition. When Pluto opposes a planet, you become face to face with forces greater than self. And for him, that's big, right? Because he thinks that there's nothing bigger than he is. But Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth, is opposite his Venus, what he values, what's important to him. And we know he values money above all, and his Saturn, the structure of his reality. And so he's under an awful lot of stress, an awful lot of stress. Now, what's happening with this chart is that there is a kite formation in this chart, and I'll show you where that is. A kite formation is made up of a grand trine and then another planet or planets that are opposite one of the points on the grand trine, creating what looks like a kite. And so we have a grand trine, and then we have, well, I'll show you. It's easier to show you than just describing it. So we have a grand trine with, he has his moon in Scorpio in the 8th house. Okay. Transformation of his feelings. And this is also, the 8th house is the house of taxes and death. So maybe we'll see his taxes. Okay. So we have this in a trine. And let me see if I can do this as neatly as possible. To his Mars. Okay, that's not going to work. Let's try to find something that actually works. Ooh, let's do it in pink. I hate that. Okay, so we have the moon, which is his emotions, trine Mars. It's trying this whole configuration here. Okay, closest to his Mercury, and is also trine Neptune. And so here's that grand trine I was talking about, and it's in water signs in the water houses. The water houses are the houses of endings. It's the soul houses. So this is a real soul stirring time for Mr. Trump. Now, in numerology, his soul vibration is a 16-7 vibration, which is the Tower card, Trump Tower and all. Okay, so we have the trine. Now, trines by themselves can just sort of sit in the background and like la-di-da. It's there. It's like part of you. You don't even see it. But when you have something opposing the trine, as we do here, okay, with Pluto, Saturn, and the South Node opposing, of course, the North Node, Mars and Neptune, we have the kite formation, and you can see the kite right there. This activates the whole configuration. This in opposition, and this in sextiles. And so we can access the moon, we can access Neptune. Neptune is the planet of lies. Okay. And also unconditional love and compassion, but we're talking about Donald Trump here. All right, so Saturn is at 1859 degrees of Capricorn. Mars is at 1842 of Capricorn, of Cancer. It's an almost exact opposition. Mars Saturn oppositions are like with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake at the same time. So there's a lot of stop and go. There's a lot of frustration because you want to move forward, and of course Mars in Cancer is not that good at moving forward anyway. And then you have Saturn sitting there and saying no. So he's going to hear a lot of no's this year, I think. And of course we know how he likes that. The other thing that's going on in his chart, and let me maybe find a different color to work with here. hopefully I'll pick one that works, is he has his sun at 22 degrees, and then he has Jupiter here at 19, and we've talked about this opposition, but it is square Neptune. He has a grand, he has a T-square in his chart. This Neptune at 18 degrees of Pisces is actually squaring his natal. It's squaring his natal moon, squaring his natal south node, squaring his natal north node, squaring his natal sun, squaring his natal Uranus. Neptune is about deception and lies. When he was elected, Neptune was conjunct the south node. Neptune is smoke and mirrors, magicians, the sleight of hand, deception, things that are hidden. It's also the savior complex. And he came in as a savior, sort of as a savior persona. He took on the mask of that because he himself takes on whatever persona he needs to take on in order to get what he wants. And so he was going to be the savior. He was going to save Social Security. He was going to save jobs. He was going to do this. He was going to do that. And only him could do that. And so we see how that's worked. Eventually, the lies catch up with you. Eventually, people see you clearly. And this could be the year that people see things more clearly with Donald Trump. We can only hope. What else did I want to say about that? There was a couple of other things I wanted to mention. Having Jupiter in that ninth house makes me a little bit concerned about expanding stuff out in the larger in the foreign lands. But the fact that Mars is in the fourth house says to me that the energy is here in America. His fights are in America, not necessarily in foreign lands. Okay, so that I think is a good thing. Now, a lot of people, I've read a couple of other astrologers, they seem to think with all that he's been through, and he's had some really heavy duty aspects to his chart, of all he's been through, there's always like something comes in the end and he's scot free. That's usually Jupiter. An opposition to Jupiter, squares to Jupiter are not great. They're not great. And Jupiter on the south node brings out all the negative qualities of your south node, in my experience. So, is this his last year as president? Does this bode for this? What I would say about this chart is that he has an opportunity for some deep soul growth, self-awareness, and in that process, his ability or inability to do that, we as Americans are going to have a lot of opportunities for our own soul growth as a country and an exposure to the wounds that we have. The 32-5 as a wound is freedom without responsibility. And he is just that. He is the epitome of freedom without responsibility. He takes and takes and takes. He doesn't give anything. He steals things. He abuses the system. He doesn't pay his taxes. And he scoffs that we're such a bunch of suckers. Because he is completely id. And to a certain extent, America can be very id. Oh, American exceptionalism, we're the best, we're the greatest. Yeah, we helped in World War II. If it wasn't for us, perhaps, Germany would have taken over the world. But that doesn't give us license to just run roughshod over the rest of the world, which we've pretty much been doing since World War II. Part of this journey for us as Americans is that we are going to have our Pluto return in 2022. Pluto in Capricorn, 27 degrees. Pluto in Capricorn is the abuse of power and empire. We were born as a product of pushing against that, and we have become that. And we have to come to terms with that. And Donald Trump is here to teach us that. And so it's going to be a rip-roaring year, folks. Things aren't going to slow down. Things are not going to get back to normal. There is no normal. We actually have to create a new normal. And I'm all for that because the old normal wasn't so great. If you're a woman, if you're a minority, if you're poor, if you're brown, it's not good. It's time for this to really be, for us to really move in the direction of what the founding fathers, and now instead of just the founding fathers, it's going to be the founding fathers and the founding mothers. The women are going to speak up. The immigrants are going to speak up. The natives are going to speak up. The Africans who were brought here in chains from Africa are going to speak up. The Aquarian age is here, folks. We can be great leaders in that in America. But we have to face our shadow, and Donald Trump's going to help us. I hope you enjoyed this. Like and subscribe. If you would like to get a reading with me, I do those. I do have openings next week, so I'm pretty open. So if you're interested in that, contact me below or email me at vickyscurbo@gmail.com. You can, I think, get that information off the channel. Have yourself a great day. We're going to do fine with all of this. Just stay in your hearts. Do what you love. Become what you want to see. Don't worry about this guy. This guy is doing his thing. We're going to do our thing. We're going to come through this better, stronger, and more loving. Have yourself a great night. Thanks again. Bye.